later on, but I want to talk about something much more serious now, which is the terror threat to Britain. Now, there was a big debate on this, and certainly there was a meeting in Downing Street at Cobra, that emergency committee, yesterday, where Rishi Sunak basically told the police and security services, MI5 and MI6, to prepare for a terror attack because of the tensions, the rise in tensions over the Israel-Hamas war. And of course, we've seen those huge pro-Palestine protests in London at the weekend. There were calls for an intifada from London to Gaza at one point, a display of a blood-soaked effigy of dead babies. I saw them, they were sort of bouncing them on a Palestinian flag, absolutely horrendous, and chants in reference to a 7th century mass slaughter of Jews. Now, 5 people were charged with public order offences by the Metropolitan Police, but I wonder about this threat, how big it is. Let's talk to Dr David Lowe, who is a terrorism commentator. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, David. Sunak telling police to prepare for this, pro-Hamas marchers on the street. I'm not saying for a second that everybody at that march was pro-Hamas, but certainly there are many signs that would lead us to believe that there's a threat, not just in terms of the terrible events that are happening in the Middle East, but here in the UK as well. What's your assessment of it, David?
Yeah, good afternoon, Peter. As you were introducing this item, you were talking about the comments that have been passed. And, you know, it's one of those situations where we live in a democracy, we have freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, so right to protest. And, you know, there will be sympathy for the Palestinian cause, there will be sympathy for the Israeli cause, and it's quite right that they should go on the streets and have a protest. But as you were saying, you look at those comments, that line has been crossed. They're not protected by freedom of expression. It becomes a hate crime, at least. But what I think is concerning, I think what they were concerned with in Cobra, is the influence some of these speakers are having, some of these comments are having, for an individual to suddenly feel, right, I'm going to do something about this. I will, you know, say, for example, on the Palestinian side, that's where their feelings are. They could make an improvised explosive device or get some form of implement and attack a synagogue. Now we've crossed the line. When we're talking about acts of terrorism now, quite clearly. And I think this is the concern they've got. Where our terrorism threat level is still substantial, that as an attack is likely. And it'll be interesting to see if the government and looking at the Joint Terrorism Analysis Centre, who is based at Thames House in London, if they assess whether the terrorism level should go back up to severe, which we have for many months. So this is the concern I think they've got from the Cobra meeting, because it's a very volatile situation that we're dealing with.
There's sort of 2 aspects of this in my mind, David, and I wonder if you could kind of decode them for us. One is how much the police and security services have to be aware of this. You're talking about possibly raising the terror threat level, and surely they're sort of always, you know, they're monitoring hundreds of people. That's what the security services do. But also what we should do, because I was absolutely appalled to see some reports in the last few days of various events being cancelled. There's an ice skating rink at one of the royal palaces which has been cancelled. Various people saying that actually, oh, we have to sort of cower in this. I've even spoken to people on air who say, you know, they don't want to come into London because they feel that they're not safe because of these protests that are happening. Now, I just really think, I mean, it's lovely to sit here in a lovely, nice, warm studio and say, well, we should all not be intimidated and live our lives exactly how we're doing them. But the practicalities of that for many people just won't feel like that. And I wonder how you, first of all, how you prepare from a terrorism perspective, but also what ordinary members of the public should do, because I want people to live our lives. I love the British way of life. That's why I live in this country. That's why I am British. That is why I feel really, really very much that our freedoms and the things that set us aside from terrorists like Hamas are actually things that should be celebrated. And I just wonder what your view of all of that is, David.
Yeah, I think you're quite right. You know, we have that ability to go about our everyday business, and we have that right. The issue is, if you're going to have protests, there is a procedure. If you're going to have a protest, it should be organised and also authorised to do it. But you're quite right. You certainly, you look at London, and the numbers in London were very high and very intimidating. Obviously other cities as well. There was Belfast the weekend. There was also Manchester and so on, major cities, where feelings are very, very high. And I think that is a problem. It isn't like a peaceful protest, if you like, what we're seeing. We're seeing individuals who are absolutely got fired up with their passion about whatever their cause is. But then, as I said, and the comments that you gave, they're crossing the line. This is now intimidation, and it's intimidation leading to hate and incitement to hatred. And as I said, that was my fear before, is this could then lead to individuals inspired by what they're saying. So what can we do? Obviously, it's so easy to say, let's go back to our business normally because we have that right. But policing these large demonstrations is a sensitive issue. I do have sympathy for the Metropolitan Police in particular. If there's an individual amongst those high numbers who's calling for a new intifada, who's calling for a lesser jihad, let's have a holy war with the Jews, if they're saying from the river to the seas, Palestine will be free if we massacre the Jews in Israel, do you go in and arrest them in a large number, or do you arrest them later on? And of course, if you arrest them later on, people don't see that happening.
Yeah, of course, you're absolutely right, David. And also, if you arrest them at that exact moment, it can cause, the police will say, it can cause problems at the time. David, thank you very much indeed, Dr. David Lowe, who's a terrorism commentator.